Good evening, everybody, and welcome to DOC NYC. My name is Thom Powers. I'm the artistic director of the festival. So today's film, Persistence of Vision, this is a screener that went around our office and kind of got handed from hand to hand. As people said, you got to see this. It's a great story. To me, it was a real a discovery. I did not know this artist. I think I'd heard vaguely of Richard Williams, but did not know the story behind it. And I feel so grateful to the director, Kevin Schreck, for his persistence in bringing this story to us. So we're very pleased to have with us the director. Please welcome Kevin Schreck.
Thanks, Tom. I think that the movie should speak for itself. So I'll keep this very brisk. Really, thank you for the immense turnout, really supportive turnout. It's bigger than I expected, really, and I'm extremely, this sounds like the usual sort of ridiculous jargon, but I'm being sincere that I'm really impressed and I'm really humbled by it. So I hope you enjoy it.
So we're going to drag Kevin back up here after the film for a Q&A.
Yeah.
So have your questions ready. Here it is, Persistence of Vision.
Thank you.
Kevin, let me start by asking you what brought you into this subject. How did you find this story?
Well, I knew about Richard Williams without knowing his name, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. I mean, having done Roger Rabbit and the Pink Panther, I mean, when I was 3, that scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit when Daffy Duck and Donald Duck are doing the dueling pianos thing, I thought that was the greatest thing I'll ever see in my life. It's still up there. I read his book when I was a teenager doing some stop motion animation, and so I was very much aware of his work and his influence without knowing anything about him. And he doesn't talk about the thief in that book of his, the Animator Survival Kit. And 5 years ago, a friend of mine sent a link online to me saying, "You've got to check this out. This is this supposed masterpiece of animation that never was, and it's a fan edit. It's a recobbled cut." And this was by Garrett Gilchrist, who I sound like a broken record saying this, but this project would not have been possible without his tremendous work beforehand. I mean, I'm really standing on the shoulders of giants, mostly just him, all the work that he's compiled and put together. So he did this fan edit, which is the version that best resembles what Richard Williams wanted to make and is certainly the most watchable of any of the versions that are out there. And I was blown away, but I had to stop after 30 minutes because it was on Google Video and the quality was just so terrible. It was like looking at, if you Google image search a Caravaggio or a Da Vinci painting, and you get the thumbnail and you blow up that thumbnail of the JPEG and it's all pixelated, it felt wrong to look at it in that form. So I got in touch with Garrett and he sent me a couple copies on DVD, and my obsession just sort of grew and grew from there, and here I am now. So.
If we can bring up the house lights in the booth so I can see some people, we'll take some questions. Raise your hand and I will call upon you. Yes, in the middle there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a country that makes has a good track record of making television documentaries, and there were, ITV and Thames Television and Channel 4, BBC. They would do all sorts of subjects, and he was sort of this guy who had the potential to be a sort of a Walt Disney, but he wasn't as interested in the business of that and spreading out and making his theme parks. But he had the craftsmanship, and in this tiny little green building in the West End in Soho Square. And film crews would show up in 1966, 72, 80, 89, etc., roughly. Because this was an outlet, the best outlet, what with the internet not existing, to share this was a chance to plug his movie, basically. And they were interested because this was, who doesn't want to know about this guy with this mysterious supposed masterpiece? So that's where a lot of that content came from, really. It was never really stuff that he had paid for. All the money that he had was going towards that project itself. So those were really just platforms to plug the movie, basically. We reached out to him several times. I don't know if recluse is quite the right word, but he doesn't really use email or anything as far as I know. And but it's an interesting story. It's kind of a long one, but when I was assembling the possible list of interviewees, I'd heard that Michael Schlingmann, the German guy in the movie, was at one point considering doing a reunion for various crew members who worked on the film at a pub that they used to go to, 20 years ago. And I asked Michael if he was still considering doing that, and he said, well, I've kind of forgotten about it, but your project has inspired me, so why don't we do it again? So he had a list of all these people that he knew who worked on it in the latter years. I had all these people who worked on it from earlier on. So we compiled our contacts lists, and we had this big group of people who worked there from the early 60s to the early 90s, all different ages and generations and departments of animation, and all talking about working at this amazing studio on this amazing film and the other projects they had. And Roy Nesbitt was there, the Dick's right-hand man. And he's not only is he like an artistic genius, he seems like his brain belongs in the Renaissance or something. The crazy drawings and things, and all the layout he did for the War Machine and stuff. And he's also like the sweetest guy ever. No one had a bad thing to say about this guy, and he was really intrigued about the project. So I got his number, and the following day after the party, I called him up and said, Roy, we're considering going to where the studio used to be, 13 Soho Square, with a couple other animators. Would you like to join us? And we did shoot some footage, but we left it on the cutting room floor because it didn't quite fit. But anyway, I called Roy, I asked that, and he said, oh, I'd love to. He was really enthusiastic, really happy. He said, but why don't I ask Dick if he's interested too? And that never crossed my mind, but I said, sure, why not? This was our best in that we had, probably the only one we would have, the closest we would have. So he said, so let me check with Dick, but if he says no, maybe I shouldn't do it. We're still good friends, and I don't want to hurt his feelings or whatever, and that was perfectly understandable, I felt, So hung up, 45 minutes later, I'm just making a divot in the ground where we are in Kensington, Sarah and I, my line producer and camera operator and lighting technician, etc. My Roy Nesbitt. So we get a call back from Roy, and his octaves have dropped, and he's much sadder and almost a little irritated, actually. Not at me, but by the situation. He says, with a tone of voice, he says, Dick still won't talk about the movie. He says no one should talk about it, and if anyone's going to talk about it, it should be him, and he's never going to talk about it. So he doesn't want to do it. And so Roy said, I should probably back out, but he said, but Roy didn't say don't make the movie. He said, but good luck. I really hope it turns out well. But anyway, I always knew that Dick would say no. Like, I knew that intellectually, but this was the first time I felt it, like, emotionally. And that's, I'm a rational sort of person, or I try to be, but that's a big significant difference, I think, And I felt like this sort of parasite, like I was writing a tabloid on this old man who just wanted to be left alone, someone who I really respected, actually. And so I was in sort of this catatonic state, just like, we'd only shot a couple interviews and everything. But Sarah said, let's just walk this off, let's get some dinner. It was like 4 o'clock, but I guess dinner was a good distraction. So we're walking down Kensington, and I'm just staring straight, catatonic, zombie-like. And I just say in the middle, after this very awkward silence, I just say, I think we should just stop the project right now. And I was serious, at least emotionally, because I felt like I was sort of hounding this guy down, victimizing him or something. And Sarah very soberly said, well, look, you knew Dick would say no. You knew that from day one. But everybody else has said yes. Everyone else feels that this is a story worth sharing. This is a story that could be lost forever. I mean, people are getting older and everything. All that we really know about this, other than a few television documentaries, are anecdotes and memories, and those perish. And some people that we interviewed were frustrated with what happened at the studio. Some were very elated. Some were there for just a couple months. Some were there for over a decade. But the one thing that everyone had in common was that it was easily the most important part of their life, creatively and career-wise, and even socially sometimes, getting to know these people. So that sort of sober realization, made me think we should keep doing it. And we still had another week and a half in London, so what were we going to do? We just pretend we were making a movie or something for the remainder of the, So that's the closest we got to him participating. The reason why that really wasn't covered was not only because there's so much material to cover and that we had to leave some stuff out, but also because a lot of the people that we interviewed didn't really have anything to do with it because it was being made in New York. So I asked like everybody, so what about Raggedy Ann and Andy? Because I felt it'd be worth covering, and they all were like, I know he was doing it, and sometimes he'd go on plane trips for a couple of weeks, but I didn't really touch it or anything. And even the people that we interviewed, John and Culhane in New York, and a couple of the people that we interviewed in Toronto, kind of felt similarly. It was like, it was a separate thing. And, it's always story first, and there's a lot that we had to leave out, of course. And as I noticed, it was sort of like, well, I wanted to have the A material in there. You got to have the A material, even when you're covering 30, really 50 years, half a century of information. And so when I was looking at like just the storyline of this whole thing, Raggedy Ann and Andy was kind of B material. It was a significant part, but some things have to be left out, and it'd be nice to cover that, but it was a sacrifice that I guess wasn't too terrible to make. But it'd be interesting to explore that further. John Kaymaker wrote a great book on that, so I would look into that book if anyone was interested. Well, I don't think the movie is supposed to serve as a parable or as a moral or anything. It's not like, don't do anything creative or ambitious because it'll just screw you over in the end. It's not like that. Because, yeah, he didn't get to make his masterpiece, but in trying to make that masterpiece, he did so much. In a way, it almost doesn't matter that he didn't make it, because all the people he trained, all the people, he was always considered himself a student. So he was learning from the old masters like Ken Harris and Art Babbitt, and learning from even the younger people, and training them, and all the different sort of artwork they did, crayon rendering, and the oil paint sort of stuff, and this amazing array of stuff that, they were just selling stupid things like diapers and third-rate soda and, all sorts of crap, essentially, but really with beautiful works of art that are still, astounding. And so the huge amount of work, it really doesn't matter that he, in some ways, that he didn't make that movie. It's not like he's a loser or anything. So to me, it's not something that, there's no easy answers. There are a lot of gray areas, and I think that it's a project that, it's not so much a parable as it is just my attempt, with all its limitations, to show a unique period of history about a very unique artist and a very unique man with a really unique dream. And draw whatever conclusions you want from that. Yeah, but I think it was also because those were kind of being made at the same time. Like, that was a movie made in 1974, I think, Wizards. And I don't know, I think that was just, people like Bakshi and Don Bluth and Richard Williams and all these other sort of guys that had their own little companies. They were kind of showing that you don't have to be Disney to make animation, but there were sort of aesthetics happening in the ether, or whatever you want to call it, that were just sort of going on at the time. So I mean, it's sort of a unique style itself, but I don't think that there was ever, and even with Aladdin, I don't think there's ever like, I don't think it was a malicious thing. It's sort of like what Philip Pepper says. It's a form of flattery, yeah, I think that the artists at Disney just felt that, I mean, I can't say officially, but I think that they just felt, hey, that's a great idea, and he's probably not going to finish this movie, so why not? It just sucks that they kind of had the same release time at the end. I don't think either parties anticipated that, so I don't think it was a spiteful thing. I think it was just really the opposite. The second thing, what do I want to do next? Something with less archival stuff. Maybe I'll just do like a gentle nature movie with like deer and trees. There are a few ideas that I'm playing with, but to be continued.
Well, you're the first audience in New York City to see Persistence of Vision. We have 6 more days of great films at DOC NYC. Please take a catalog home and come back and see lots more. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks especially to Kevin Schreck.
Thank you. Thank you, really. Thank you.